So I'm going to exit out of here. And we're going to talk a little bit about middleware. The routing that MVC does is considered to be middleware. So middleware is used by developers to control how the application works. So in MVC, the routing is considered to be middleware. Authentication is middleware also. And where we saw all of that middleware was in startup under configure. Okay, so this is considered to be middleware. And if you want to customize your app, you can add your own middleware to it. So a middleware can generate a response. For example, if we are using authorization and a user tries to log in and they can't, the authorization middleware is going to send a response, an error response back, indicating that they've used the wrong username or password, and the user is not going to be able to proceed forward. So middleware is considered part of the request pipeline, and the middleware tends to be executed first. And I do have a little graphic that kind of shows this, where we've got our requests coming in, and then we've got our middleware that are kind of intercepting it. And in the case of authentication and authorization, it's making sure the user is who they say they are, and that they know their proper login credentials. If they don't, they never get to the next step. Okay, so it goes through the middleware onto the routing, and we saw the default route. So if the very first time this runs, it is going to go to the default route. Okay, and then we go through the controller initialization. It goes to the appropriate action method, and then there's some type of result. And the result quite often is a view that is rendered to the user. Okay, so the result could be a data result. That would be something like once you're in the application, let's say you have a membership app and somebody adds a new member. Okay, so the result of the execution is a data result if you're adding a new member to the database, okay, because it's got to actually go through and execute the add command. If you're changing data in the database, that's also a data result. And the other term you should be aware of is that any of the middleware that you are using should appear in your configure method. And when you place it in here, it is called registering. So you are registering your middleware. Now, the chapter talks a little bit about state. State really comes more into play when we are interfacing with the database, but there is state also involved anytime you're using MVC and there's an error. So if there's any type of error, you are in an error state that needs to be corrected. So basically, it is keeping track of the properties and the variables and the data that you are accessing in the application. And web apps have to do that because HTTP itself is a stateless protocol. And what that means is it does not track the actions that you've taken. It only is interested in what you're currently doing. So it has no idea what you did before or maybe what you're planning on doing. And so state is what is keeping track of all that. And it's used a lot when we get into database. Because if there's any kind of error, it's in an error state and you can't update the database. So we will be looking at that in more detail in upcoming weeks.